All right. When we do that, if you're using your school district account, there might be two tabs at the top. One that says your school district's name, and then the other that says maybe general. We want to make sure that we're in Google's general template gallery right now. And as we look through here, we see that there are some different sections. We have personal ones that you can use, work-related, and education. Let's take about 5 minutes to explore these different templates, and you can click on one and spend a lot of time in it, or you can use this time and look at as many as you'd like. So again, it is 9:46. We'll come back together, let's say 9:50, and we'll be able to share out on what cool things we're able to find. Of course, at any point, if you have a question, please feel free to turn your mic on and ask it out loud, and we'll be able to address things together.
So Adam,
Yes,
when
Alyssa?
I did my Google Forms, I don't get all the options that you do. Is that because my school district may not have them, or
So if you look at the top of where it says template gallery, are there two tabs maybe?
yes, there's two. Well, no, it just says template gallery and then up and down.
Can you share your screen with me real quick? I'm going to stop my screen share, and then if you could do yours.
Let me. I don't think I have. Well, maybe I do. So this is my screen.
Cool. So if you could click where it says template gallery, and then they have the two arrows. Yep.
Yep.
Click there. And then it's in Maple Run, but if you click where it says general.
Okay.
And you should get them all there.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let me stop share.
Cool. All right, so let's take another minute or so to continue exploring these, and then we'll come back together. All right, so it's 9:50. Let's go ahead and come back together. And I would love to hear from some folks about which of these you found and that you really liked, that you could imagine using in your own schools.
I'm a fan of the exit ticket and course evaluation. I use those pretty much with each course.
Mm-hmm.
And so to have it all online and easily, I can refer back to it pretty easily and use that data. That's kind of nice.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and if you think back to, the evaluation form that you all have been filling out the last few days, it's very similar to the course evaluation, right? Like we have the grid choices, kind of the Likert scale, and this allows you to go and just customize it and make it exactly what you want. And I love the exit ticket one too. This is definitely one that I try to encourage new to forms users to check out. So awesome, thank you. Anyone else want to share what they found?
I really like to find a time because oftentimes I have to call kids back for the end of the day block, which we use for ELOs. Or I'm setting up a parent-teacher conference, or the students are setting up a student-led conference.
Mm-hmm.
And I often have to create this, and it's nice that it's already done.
Absolutely. And that you can point, the other teachers at your school to, hey, let's start to implement this, or all of us use this common thing and it's already built for you. All right, so any other folks want to share one that you particularly liked?
Well, I like the exit ticket also, and that's the one that I used to create the book order form.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that maybe the order request would work, but it doesn't really have the right questions. So I guess I'll still explore, but I think it's the exit ticket also.
And that's an important point, Eileen, is that, with any of these are just kind of the suggested questions. You don't need to keep any of them. And they're just the suggested background color and all those things. So we can adapt and customize any of these. One that I think could be really helpful moving forward. I always used the contact information one and would have parents fill it out at the beginning of the year. And I know that might look a little different this year, but having the question of what is your preferred method of contact and having that listed, or what's your family setup right now? Are parents working and able to support? Are they staying at home? What does it look like for our kiddos, and being able to get on the same page right at the beginning of the year? So at this point, well, actually, are there any other ones that we want to highlight, or maybe questions that you had before we leave the template gallery page? Okay. So at this point, we're going to keep rolling forward. And what I'd like you to do, I'm going to give you two different choices here. You can either see in the top left where it says blank, you can either open a blank Google form and start fresh, or if you see one of these templates that you really like, go ahead and we can use that. And I'm going to give an overview of how we build questions, add content, and things like that. So really either way that you want to move forward, you can at this point. I'm going to do a blank one just to allow you to see from scratch how we put these things together. Okay. So I'm in my form. It says untitled form both in the top left and then also in the center. The very first thing I like to do when I get into a new file in Google Drive is to give it a name. So I'm going to, looks like we have a question maybe. Do folks need to have Google accounts to complete Google Forms? No, you can have that setting where they have to be signed in or they have to be a member of your school system, but we can also have it turned off where anybody can fill it out. So good question there. All right, so I'm gonna, the first thing I do again is I wanna click where it says untitled form in the top left, and I wanna give this a title. So for me, this is going to be live demo, but you can make it whatever you want. Can I use a template and change the questions? Absolutely, you definitely can, and that's a great way to get started. Okay, so I have live demo. When I click off of where we change the name, you'll notice that it also changes it in the center. A little note about what these two titles are. The one in the top left is the file name, and that's only someone who owns the file is going to see that. This is what, when I'm in Google Drive a week from now, 2 months from now, a year from now, that's what I'm going to see. What we have here in the center is what the responder is going to see when they fill this out. So live demo would be what they would see. In here, we can give a description. So if this were like a contact information thing, it could be, please fill out your most recent information so that I can serve you and your child. So a couple good questions in here. So where in Drive will I find the forms that I create? If I put it in a folder, it would be in that folder. It will generally show up in the My Drive section. And whether we have it organized by last modified or alphabetically, it would just show up there. If you only want to see your forms, you can go to forms.google.com and only that file type would show up. All right, so we have our title in here for both the file, and we have the title for our form itself. And again, these can be linked or they can be separate. And then we start getting into our questions. So the very first question that I'm going to do is first and last name. And you'll notice that as I start typing in the question, the answer or the question type changes, okay? So it was originally going to be a multiple choice, but because Google has artificial intelligence running behind the form, it knows that this is going to be a short answer response. So in here, you'll notice that I can add my question. To the right, it says short answer, but I can adjust this to be whatever I want. When I click on this, you'll notice that we have 2, 5, 6, 9, 11 different choices. And we're going to take a look at a few of these, okay? Then down here, it says short answer text. We can't type there. The people who fill it out, that's where they're going to type their response. But for us, it just shows us it's going to be that type of slot where they can put their information, that type of field. As we continue going through this card with our question, we see these controls at the bottom right, and that includes duplicate. So, you know, if I know I need to have another short answer question, and maybe it's Guardian's first and last name, I can adapt it that way. Next to the duplicate button, I also have delete. If I want the question to go away, I can do that. I have required, where they can't submit unless that field is filled in. And then I also have these 3 dots, or some people call it a snowman or an ice cream cone menu, whatever you want to call it. But these will give us a few different options based on the type of question that we're asking. So often you'll see something that says response validation. If you're brand new to forms, please ignore response validation for now. It's kind of like a 201 level or 301 level. But what this allows us to do, we can say it needs to be this type of answer. So if I do response validation, I can say it has to be a number, or it has to be an email address, a URL. It has to be more than 500 characters or less than 500 characters. And I can really drill down to exactly what type of response I'm looking for. I know math teachers will, or also science teachers might use response validation to make sure that people type in a number response instead of writing out 100 as a word. So we can make it number and, you know, be able to do that type of thing. Or I can say that it needs to be a phone number.
Adam,
Yes.
if I forget, like for the very first question, if I say, oh, I forgot to put a question before that I wanted, how do I do that?
Good question. So all of these are drag and droppable. So you'll notice that when we have a question selected, so like on my screen right now, I have Guardian's first and last name selected. At the very top, we have what's called a handle, and you'll notice those, it's a 3x2 set of dots. When I click on that, I can just drag and drop to reorder my questions. Great question. All right, so Something else that we want to notice is on the right-hand side, regardless of what question we have selected, you'll notice that we have a menu that pops up on the far right-hand side that's kind of floating there. And on here, we have 6 different options. So let's go ahead and just run through what these are. The very first one is to add a question, and this is a circle with a plus sign, an addition sign in it. So when we do that, it brings in a brand new, fresh question. I'm going to do, it's multiple choice, so which class period? And I can start typing in first, second, third. Again, it's going to predict what type of question you want to do. Let's go ahead and run through what these different options are right now. So when we click on the question type button and we get that menu of 11 different options, short answer and paragraph, I think that that's probably pretty self-explanatory. However, there's not too much of a limit when it comes to short answer. I think that you can put like 11 pages worth of information in there, but visually it looks like it only requires less than what the paragraph one would be. But really how they behave, it's kind of interchangeable. Then when we get to multiple choice, checkboxes, and dropdown, dropdown and multiple choice both behave pretty similarly in that you can only pick one option. The main difference in how these act is how they are displayed. So with multiple choice, I'm going to see all of the options laid out. With dropdown, I have to click on the button and then go and find it. I usually use multiple choice, but if I'm doing something where I might have more than like 5 or 6 options, I'd probably defer to dropdown. I used to work in a district in North Carolina that had 81 schools. So when we had people fill out a form and say what school they work at, we would make sure that we always use dropdown because we wouldn't want a page with 81 schools listed. Yeah, so getting some cool ideas with some other 6 dot option or the dot options. We'll get back to that in a little bit. Okay, so then check boxes. This is a little bit different because you can pick all or none and anything in between. So if I make this checkbox, now our responders could pick more than one. When it comes to multiple choice or checkbox, we also have this choice in here of adding other, and think of this as a write-in vote. So just like we have the option on a ballot in November or in our primaries of writing in a candidate, if we select that add other, then we get that choice here too. So just, be aware of that. I'm going to get rid of the other for right now and go back to checkboxes and continue looking through these. File upload is pretty cool. This is a newer feature. So I'm going to make a new question and I'll show what that looks like. So if we wanted someone to submit your project, maybe we're not using Google Classroom at our schools, but we still want to receive their work, we can submit your project and then switch to file upload. And with this, our responders are able to upload something, or they can select a file that comes from Google Drive. And it's a very easy way. Forms will organize it in your Google Drive for you using a folder, and all of those submissions would come in here. Now within this, you can say, I only want to accept documents, or I only want to accept an image or drawing, whatever it might be. You can say you can only submit one file, or you can submit up to 10 files, which becomes quite a bit, and so forth. I don't use file upload too often. I might use it like 2 or 3 times per year, but when I need it, it can be very, very useful. Continuing down, we get into another set of 3 choices that are kind of similar. So with my feedback form that I do every day with you, I'm using the multiple choice grid where I can say, how was your experience today. And I can start to build out that Likert scale with my rows and my columns. So rows would be my question prompt. So this would be prepared, engaging, expertise, whatever it might be. And then my columns are going to be what those different values are, kind of like my rubric, right? So horrible, terrible, no good. And then our column 2 will just be 2, 3, 4, 5, or sorry, 5 will be simply the best. Okay, so we want to make sure that we have those labels, we orient what they mean. So I'll go ahead and name this. It's kind of when I receive feedback from you guys, sometimes I notice that someone will give me all 1s, which on my form is the worst score. And so when I see that, I go and check what qualitative feedback they also give me. And sometimes I notice that, oh, they probably really did have a horrible experience, and that makes sense. But sometimes I see that there's kind of a disalignment there where their qualitative feedback to me is, this was amazing, I learned so much, but the quantitative suggests that things were horrible and that it was the worst experience they've ever had. So whatever type of clue or cue that we can give them to make sure that they fill this out the way that we intend would be helpful. Notice that we can also require a response in each row simply by clicking that toggle switch. And so now they would need to answer, am I prepared? Am I engaging? Am I an expert? Before they hit submit. Okay, so those are kind of the main question types that we have. I'm going to keep rolling through, and I will give you some time to just try things out in just a moment. There are 2 last pieces that I definitely want to show before you have that tryout time. So the next things that we're going to look at are also on that floating right-hand side menu. And if we look at the 4th one down, we're going to kind of look at the 4th and 5th at the same time. This is how you add media to your form. So I can add an image, and with this, it can come from 6 different places. I can upload, I can take a picture using my camera. I can do a Google image search. So this could be Vermont. That's an awesome picture here. And I'm going to insert. And so now I have this picture in here. So if I wanted to take a picture of a graph or insert a graph in here, and then have my students respond using several questions that refer to that graph, I can do that. I can also add a video in here. So using that 5th button down, and I can do a search for Montpelier VT. And here's a 3-minute drone tour of Montpelier. I'm going to select that. And so now directly in my form, responders can watch a video. Now, I really like this as a way to pre-assess where we might give students directions from Khan Academy, from some YouTube channel. Maybe I record using Explain Everything, and then they might answer a few questions on how do I use a quadratic equation? How do I support writing in my sentence, or look at a graph and respond to it? So we can really be intentional with how we use this multimedia to support our learners. All right, so at this point, I think the best way that a lot of us learn are by trying things. So I'm going to give you, it's 10:10 right now. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to add as many types of questions as you can, add some different media in, move things around, mess with it. You're not going to break anything in your form, but go ahead and take this time to really explore what's available in here. If you're someone who is brand new, maybe you hang out looking at a couple question types. If you've been using this tool for a long time, try out the response validation, see how you can really take it to the next level with media, things like that. But let's go ahead, explore and 10, 16 will come back together and review. And if at any point you have questions, feel free to ask.
Adam, while folks are exploring, I have a question specific to kind of like maybe my being a music teacher. I know there's some other music teachers here as well. Is there a way to put in a Google form a task where we're asking a student to record themselves either with audio or with video, and then it would be sent back to us through Google Classroom, Google Forms?
So if the student has already recorded and has that file on their computer, then you could use that file upload option, where they could submit it that way, and it would save to your Google Drive. You know, ultimately at that point, it would be a matter of preference for you about how, if you would use Classroom to do that, or if you would use the form to do it. And it, again, would just be kind of whichever one works better for you or your students.
But there's nothing that they can click that then opens up the camera on their Chromebook?
No.
Okay.
No. Or at least I haven't encountered that yet. I'll phrase it that way.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions?
Yeah, Adam, I have a question. I like this idea of gathering contact information from my parents, because I usually have that attached to my course outline. So I'm looking at like a side-by-side. So I would have one parent's name and then their contact information next to it, because there's going to be multiple guardians. So instead of having them separate, I'd love them side-by-side.
Okay.
What would be the best format for that?
Can you share your screen with me real quick, and we'll take a look?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
So I would change it, obviously. I would do each contact, like Guardian 1, but instead of having them here and then here, I would like it linear.
You're kind of limited that the questions are going to be set up in a vertical, not a horizontal framework.
Okay.
Yeah.
No biggie.
Now, one thing that you could do, you'll notice on the right-hand side, there are going to be two tools that might allow you to better separate Guardian 1, Guardian 2. The first is where you see the two T's. So if you go ahead and click that, and then move that untitled title above full names. So click the handle, those 6 buttons. Yeah, move that up. So this entire part could be Guardian 1 information. And then when you transition to the second Guardian, do another one of those titles and Guardian 2 information, you can repeat those questions in there.
So this box would just be Guardian 1. And
Guardian 1 information. And then
within that box, I could.
So this, when you use a title, it's not two-way. You're not asking for anything back. You're just giving them information here.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. And does this, so on my view, obviously I see these all sectioned off. Is that what the viewer also sees?
So at any point, if you want to preview what what the viewer or the person filling it out would see, if you see the eye in the top right-hand corner of the screen, that's going to switch to what their view would be.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, Adam, this is a really basic question. I put in a linear scale question and I want to add another, but I don't see how to do that.
So if you would like to share your screen, then we can walk through it real quick.
Oh, share my screen.
Okay, so in Zoom, there might be a green button at the bottom that has It's a square with an arrow pointing up. If you click
I
on that.
see it.
Okay.
Is it shared?
You might need to select the view that you want us to see, and then there's a button in the bottom right-hand corner that I think will make it live. Or I can try to anticipate what you're trying to say and just share my screen if you'd prefer that.
Well, I would love to be able to share.
Yeah.
So I clicked on my practice form.
Okay.
I clicked share screen and I see you, whiteboard, iPhone. Oh, there it is. I see it.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
Nice job. Okay. So in here, we had the Likert. So right now it's a linear scale. So right with the way that question type is set up, you can only have one question prompt. So if you click where it says linear scale, see that drop down? And make it multiple choice grid.
Okay.
So now you would make how well did class go today be row 1, and you would add your questions in as row 1, row 2, row 3, and then your answer options would be the columns.
Okay.
Cool. Okay. So I'm going to switch back. We'll have a little bit of time to respond and listen to people share out on what they saw. What were some challenges that you ran into, and then successes that you had as you're adding different types of things to your form?
Using the multiple choice grid, I found that you couldn't make the column headings much more than a few words for it to show up. I was thinking I could use it like a rubric and have a lot of, for self evaluation.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good point. So, so a couple things to speak to at that, Eric. So the first is when we're doing the editing mode, which we're all mostly in editing mode right now, it's much more condensed than when we switch to what the viewer actually sees. So if in the top right-hand corner, if you want to see what your responder will actually encounter, you can click that eyeball, and this will switch to a new tab and a preview. So most likely it will just go down to several lines. So you can see how's your experience today, prepared, engaging experience or expertise. And, I have just one word in here, but it would go down vertically in there. But you do want it to be pretty concise. That is definitely true. What other questions did you guys run into as you're exploring, or maybe you had an aha moment as you're exploring? And then I see a couple questions in the chat that we'll get to as well. Okay. We'll go ahead to the chat.
Adam,
Yes?
is there a way to embed a web page link?
You can embed a link. What I typically do is do it as part of the description. So if you look at my screen right now and I have which class period, I'm going to click those 3 dots, bring up description. And if I needed them to go to google.com,
Okay.
when I'm in the preview, it's now linked in the form when they get there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, we also had a question in here about the date and time question format. So I'm going to run through that real quick. Let's do add question, or at least you can watch me doing add question. When I switch to multiple choice, or when I switch from multiple choice, I can do date or time. Now, I don't really like how they have this worded, because when I select date, it also will give me the option of adding a time. So when I make this, so it could be when is your birthday? And so in here, it would bring up a calendar for them. And we'll switch to the preview mode in just 1 second so you can see what it looks like for the person filling it out. In the bottom right corner, if I go to those 3-dot menu, I can include time if I want to. I can have the year in there if I want, or just month day. So I have those choices in here. Again, when I go to the preview by clicking that I, it's going to come up down here, when is your birthday? And I can click and drop in 5. Does that make sense? Okay. And then
Adam, when I tried to do a multiple choice one, I wasn't able to type more than just my first option. Everything else was grade.
Okay. So when we're doing multiple choice, let's take a look. Okay, so which class period? I'm switching it back to multiple choice. So in here, if I'm in my first option, I've got first, right? All I have to do is hit enter or return, and that will bring up additional options that I can put in there. The other good thing is if you have, again, we had 81 schools. I didn't want to have to retype all of those. If I had those listed in a spreadsheet, I could copy that entire list of 81, go to the first option, hit paste, and it will fill in one per line, which is very, very helpful. So if you have a class roster and you want the student to select their own name to do a self-assessment, or if you're trying to do quick feedback and tie it to a particular student, I've seen a lot of special ed professionals do this. They would copy and paste their roster, put it into student name, and then they could just select give feedback that reports on that particular student. Okay. So do we feel pretty confident with how to add questions and different types of questions that we can use in Google Forms? Are there any lingering questions that you would like to address before we move on to different parts of our forms? Question, it saves automatically. Yes, it does. You'll notice in the top left-hand corner, it says all changes saved in Drive. Now it doesn't automatically save as people are filling it out. So if they fill out the first part of your form and then their computer crashes, they would need to start back over. So if you're trying to gather a lot of information at the same time, it might be helpful for your students to start doing their work in a doc or in slides and then copy and paste it over. Then I see one other question here. With linear scale response, is there a way to input your own scale? I can only see 1 through 10 offered. Can you do 1 to 0? Let's try it, okay? So I'm going to make a new question, and in here, it's gonna be linear scale. And I have my drop down next to both of these, so I can make it 0. And my right hand, my highest value, doesn't look like I can do 1. I'm kind of surprised by that. So maybe our binary becomes 1 or 2 instead of 0 or 1. And I can give it the label that would allow them to know 1s are yeses, 2s are nos, or whatever it might be. So 1 might be not mastery, 2 would be mastery. Okay. So we're going to keep kind of rolling through some other parts of forms. I do want to be cognizant of time and want to give you ample time to build out with one of our challenges. So I'm going to switch to a form that I've used before. Let's see. And we'll look at what the results look like. Okay, so this is a, nope, that's not the right one. Like I said, I have a lot of forms, right? Okay. So this is from feedback that I've done. We had probably, well, this is saying 400 responses. I thought it'd be a lot higher than that, so I'm not quite sure what's going on. But when I'm in here, you'll notice at the top, right in the middle, we have two different tabs. We have questions where I'm editing my form and I'm making changes to it. And then to the right, we have responses. And this is where I can see everybody's choices that they've done. So in here, I'm going to turn to be able to accept responses again, just so you can see what you'll most likely see. In here, we can do a summary. And so this is looking at all 400 responses, 405 responses, and it gives me charts that are updated in real time. So 406 responds. It's going to shift all these, and it'll just be a minute shift because of how many we've had, but it still would move a little bit. And down in here, we would see these charts as well. So this is going into that Likert scale or multiple choice grid. As we keep going, here are some of those text-based, and these would either be a short answer or paragraph response. And we have a few of those in here. And every single one of these, again, is going into this chart automatically. And if I wanted to take this chart, maybe it's my feedback at the end of a unit that I'm doing or midway through a semester, and I wanted to share this with my administrator to exemplify the work that I'm doing in my reflection, I can click this, it's a duplicate or copy button, and I can copy and paste that onto a doc. I can copy and paste it into slides, and it's going to continue to update. So I've clicked this copy button. I'm going to go to forms, or go to my presentation here, and I'll show you how easy it is to put this in on one of these pages. So I've got forms. I'm going to paste, and it's making my image, and I have that in there. All right, so bouncing back in here, we've seen how to look at the summary responses. I can also go question by question. So when I click on question, I can see who all picked docs and slides. I can click 171 responses were for that session title, and it's going to bring up all of the people who selected that. I don't use the question one as much as I like to use the individual. So when I come into an individual, I can select, I want to look at submission number 73, and that's going to bring up how they responded. Now, hopefully none of you have class sizes of over 400 where they're all filling out the same form. But with this, I can come in and be able to find it. I know a lot of you would probably also have your student's name as the first thing. And so they could, as you go through, know that this belongs to Carter. Once you're all done with this, we can print individual responses. We can print the summary responses and be able to see that. We also know that anytime we see the 3 dots, that there's some magic behind the scenes there. So we'll go ahead and click there. So in here, I can print all responses. I can delete all responses. I can select where this data is going. Now, what I would like you to notice is that within your form, when we're in the editing mode, when we're in responses, you'll see that there's a green icon in the top right-hand corner. And this is where someone earlier today said that they love that forms links with spreadsheets. So let me show you what that looks like. So when I click on this, it's going to open up into a Google Sheet. And in here, we'll see my 400 and something different responses. And from here, I can do statistical analysis on things. I can make additional charts that help to tell the story that I'm trying to tell. But again, all of this is updated in real time. So if somebody else hits submit, it's going to be added in as an additional row in here that I can quickly find what I'm looking for. It is taking a second to load right now, but again, there are many, many responses to this that it's trying to load. Okay. So in here at the bottom of my screen, you'll see that this says form responses 2. That lets me know that this tab of my spreadsheet is tied to the form that we just looked at. Form response 1 is tied to a different form. So both of those are importing different materials. And so when I switch over, we can see all of that data being brought in. It's just moving a little slowly compared to what I'm used to. All right, so some other things that, what questions, let's pause real quick. What questions do you have about accessing the responses, either as a summary or individual? What questions do you have at this point? Okay, so I'm taking it that that's, it's pretty clear that we feel comfortable with it. And then also know that I do have a video about how to do this in our slides later on. You can always go back to. All right, so once we have our responses figured out, the next step that I like to take people to are looking at our different settings that we have in forms. So what I'd like you to do is you'll notice in the top right-hand corner, we have what looks like a gear. Let's go ahead and click on that. And when we do that, we get 3 different tabs in here. So the very first one that we get is general. And if you're using a school district account right now, you probably will see some additional choices in here. So you can make it, and I think by default for a lot of districts, it's going to only allow you to collect from people who are signed into a district email. So this is helpful when you're working with kids, and especially if you're using Chromebooks, it's not a big deal because they're all logged in with their school district account. But if you're trying to do a form with parents, they probably don't have a school district account, so you need to make sure that's turned off. You may still want to collect email addresses so that you can email them later, but that's really up to you. Then we get into requires only 1 response per person. They would need to be signed in. So I often leave both of these blank if I'm working with parents. Then down below, we have respondents can edit after they submit. That would basically, after they hit submit, it's going to give them a button, a link where they can go back and make changes. Now this final piece in here, respondents can see summary charts and text responses. I never click that. I never ever click that. So there's a district there's a school in my district, a high school, that used a Google form to allow students to report about bullying that was taking place. And they accidentally had this button checked. So after students submitted about, oh, I was bullied by this person, or I've seen it happen on grounds of race or on sex or whatever it might be, now all of a sudden, all of those students who hit submit saw the summary and were able to see any names that were listed in there. That made it where I'm just like turned off. I'm never going to have that button selected, although I'm sure there are some instructional reasons why we might want it to be. The next tab over is presentation. So this is just a few short things in here. The very first one is progress bar. And this is going to work if you have more than 1 section to your form. And we didn't even get into sections. I think I have a resource on how you might use that in the future. But for the most part, as an introduction, you probably won't need to use that too much. The next one is shuffle question order. And this seems like a great idea, but in practice, it can cause a lot of chaos where you're requesting a student's name at the end of a document or in the middle of the document, or if you have a YouTube video that you want people to respond to, well, now all of a sudden it's below the questions that they're supposed to respond to. So I only use this one very rarely. I definitely use shuffle answer responses a lot more, but I try to avoid question order shuffling. We also have the choice to show link to submit another response. That would be after your submitter is done, they'd see a link, submit another response. It's kind of up to you, whatever you want. And then finally, what they see when they click submit, what does that final message say? By default, it's your response has been recorded, but you can make this whatever you want. So thank you for submitting. I cannot wait to learn with your family this year. And you can make it whatever you want. And you can adapt that at different points too. The final piece in here is quizzes. We kind of looked at this example yesterday, so you can refer back to that. And I do have more materials in our slides today that you can refer to as well. So I'm going to skip it for now. Now at this point, we want to make sure we hit save in order for our settings changes to take place. And we're good to go. We're going to keep going across the top now. So usually in other Google tools, when we hit send or share, it allows people to be a collaborator. And we, most of the time, won't want the people who get our forms to be collaborators here. Instead, most of the time, we'll want to switch to this link icon. And we could copy this link and put it into our Google Classroom, or put the link into an email, a newsletter, whatever it might be, so that people can click on it and go directly to our form to fill it out. Really, this is the one that I use most of the time. And you could drop that link into the HyperDoc that we're going to work on tomorrow, or again, putting it as a material in your classroom. We're going to just keep scooting over to the right, and now we have that 3-dot menu in the very top right. When we click on this, a couple things we can do. That's where our undo button is. So again, we mentioned before, like, don't worry, you're not going to break anything. You can always undo something. If you want to make a copy of the form, you can. You can print it. So if you have a student who has an accommodation that they need printed materials, you can do that. This is where we would add a collaborator. So if you and your grade level team all need to co-develop a form, this is where you'd go to add those folks in so that they could help you build it. You do not want to add your students in or the parents in as collaborators. And I only bring this up because I've seen that happen many, many times, where everybody, instead of filling out the form, everybody's editing the form at the same time, and that leads to pure chaos. Okay, so the final thing that I want to get into about how to build a form and you know, all the different features of it is this color palette here, this customized theme. So my art teachers are rejoicing right now. We get to make it look pretty and not just this purple website. So let's go ahead and click that. It's between maybe a puzzle piece and an eye, and it's that color palette. When we do this, you'll see the header, and we can choose an image. Let's go ahead and click there. And in here, it comes up with several different categories. On the left-hand side, you can upload your own. I know some people talked about that in our classroom session a couple days back, or you can add one from your photos. I'm a big fan of this colored pencil one, but let's go ahead and find one of these images you can use with your kiddos. So you'll notice that when you select one, it might also change the color palette for your form. So I'm gonna change my theme color. You can change your background color. And we also have 4 choices for what type of font for your questions. I very rarely change the font, but you can if you'd like to. Okay, good question. And we will go back over the link icon and what to do with that. Good question. Cool. All right, so please keep in mind that you can change the theme, the header at any point. You're not stuck with it, and you can make it what represents that particular form or what you're trying to get out of it. So I'm gonna click the X next to theme options, and it hides that menu. You'll notice all changes are still saved. We're gonna go back to the link idea. So
Adam, can I ask you to do something to kind of backtrack a little bit?
Of course.
Can you go back to the settings and where it's the edit after submit?
Yep.
So I don't know if Google's changed this. When I first started using it, and I didn't know about that button, the kids who would still be working on an assignment and class ended, and they would close their computers and go on to the next class, and then they'd come to class the next day, and all their information they had typed in was gone. Because it doesn't save it for them automatically like a Google Doc.
Right.
So I found out that if you click the edit after submit, it allows them then to go back into it, and it does save it. So it can be tricky though for people to think like, oh, once they submit it, I don't want them to go back and edit it because I don't know, they've submitted it. So I just wanted to kind of make that clear to people that if you are going to let them work on a form over multiple time periods, you want to make sure you have that clicked.
Thank you, Stacy. That's absolutely correct. And, you know, most of the time when I use that option, it's when multiple people need to input with the same form. So we've used that for disciplinary purposes where, teacher submits, then the principal is triggered to fill out part of the form about their input, how they're dealing with it. We've used it for special ed, where we're doing referrals and RTI type things. So there are lots of ways that we can leverage that type of feature where we're still able to edit after the initial submission. So thank you for bringing that up. Let's see, I think there was one other quick question about how we would use the link. So I want to make sure we get to that. So I'm going to click the send button. And when I do that, there are 3 different ways that we can easily share our form. The first is email, and you can, drop in the parents' names in here or the students' names, and it will go to them. I generally use this link. So if I select the link, and it's that middle option, in the bottom right-hand corner, it says copy. So I'm going to click copy. And if I needed this to go into an email or I needed it to go into my newsletter, say that the slides that we're using today, I wanted it to be linked, I could highlight this, the word forms. I'm going to insert a link and then paste it in here so that people would have access to my form. You could also, again, select in Google Classroom that form and attach it that way too, so people would be drawn to fill it out. Okay, so I'm gonna head back to our slides at this point, and we're gonna keep rolling. We've spent the last really about an hour looking at the different features of forms, and I think that we took the right amount of time in there. I do want you to know that on slides 10 through maybe like 14 or 15, we do have videos for a lot of these steps too that you can go back to. So there's one in there about adding questions in media, one about analyzing data, how to do quizzes. And so those are available that you can go back to in the future. I do want to take everyone to slide 14. So you can either look at my screen, or if you have your slides pulled up, you can go there too. And 3 different challenges that we have today are, and a lot of you have kind of already adopted these focuses anyway. The first is looking at the beginning of the year and using that contact information template, remixing it to meet your needs as you are going to meet your students and their families in the coming weeks. The next option is to think about the exit ticket and how you might be able to start using that, especially as we move into distance learning or hybrid learning, whatever it might look like in your particular district. How can you use this type of feedback for formative purposes to know how you can meet their needs moving forward? And it doesn't always need to be academic exit ticket. You could definitely put in some of those SEL type of questions about how are you doing? What are some struggles or barriers that you're running into? How might I help you? A balance of academic questions and personal questions in there too. The final one is to make a quiz. And this is maybe the most ambitious of the three, but I know some of you are pretty skilled with quiz or with forms already. So maybe this is the appropriate one. And you can start from scratch. Again, that's in the template section, or you can follow this lesson that I have linked in here. And this lesson comes from Applied Digital Skills. It's an entire curriculum for adult and student learners to be able to learn how to do different skills using Google tools. So this one is focused on creating quizzes, and all of these are going to be video-based instructions on how to accomplish that task. So again, I'm going to encourage you, take about 4 minutes or 5 minutes to start work on one of these challenges. And if at any point you can unmute, ask a question, but we plan on regathering at 10:50 and continuing kind of through our wrap up at this point. Any questions before we roll into that self-selected time? Cool. Jamie, can you clarify your question for me? Can you maybe rephrase it?
Yeah, it was kind of a fault. Stacy made me think of it, and this was more from being a mom hovering over my son, making sure he was submitting everything in Google Classroom. And with forms, he'd send it off, and I was like, where's your form? Where are your answers? Like, what's going on? Did you fill out everything? And he's like, I already sent it. I don't know. So does that get stored in their Google Drive somewhere? Whether I don't necessarily need them to be able to edit the form, I just want it to be retrievable.
Mm-hmm. So if you want it to be retrievable, as the person filling it out, you can't control it. It's really, if you want your students or whoever you have filling out your forms to be able to get it, you would need to make that selection for collect, or go to settings, and then in general, select collect email addresses. Am I screen sharing? I want to make sure I am.
No.
Okay, let me get back to that.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so I went to settings. In general, we'd want to collect email addresses and then response receipts. And so this would allow people, then we get 2 choices. If respondent requests it, they'll get an emailed copy of what they said, or you can make it where it's always, and they fill out the form, and in their email, it says, here's the question, here's your response. Here's the question, here's your response. There are some ways that you can use what's called an add-on. Most of those would be in Google Sheets, not in Forms, that would send them a Google Doc or a PDF or an email that could use some of the information from what they submitted. But that's really like a 301, 401 level of using forms.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, let's take another 30 seconds or so to continue working on whichever challenge we selected, and then we'll come back together, debrief if we need to, and then continue through our presentation. All right, so let's be back together. It looks like we have another chat item. Barbara, can you speak that out loud to me, possibly?
So you had said that when we go to Google Forms, like I see my school's forms
Mhm.
and then there's the templates, and I'm trying to get to the templates, but I don't see that as an option when I went to Google Forms this time.
Okay. So when you are at forms.google.com and
Yep.
you click where it says template, there's probably a tab that says general and a tab that says whatever your school district's name is.
Well, there was before, but I don't see anything like that this time. Maybe I didn't click template. That might be the problem.
Okay. So Barbara, if you will stick around to our Q&A time at the end, I'll take a look with you and we'll definitely figure it out together.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So we're back in our slides and we are going to roll through the end. So I know there was a question earlier about how do we get the link to people. Slide 15 has that information in there. There's a video about, sorry, I have a Wolverine at my door. Let me get that real quick. What? Okay, well, you need to sit over here if you're going to be in here. You can just listen, okay? It's on the floor. Yeah. All right. So we have this video about how to share. No, you need to sit right there. No. How we share with our audience, and we can watch that, and it talks about the 3 different ways. We're going to skip over slide 16 for now and move into our wrap up. So I want to make sure that we know that we have resources out there that can be helpful for us. I'm going to make sure my video's off because I have this crazy 3-year-old in here. And okay, Carter, can you please head back out of the room, please? Thank you. So the first resource that we have is that Get Started, one that we saw a little bit ago. Then we also have digital skills. So these are the applied digital skills. We saw how to use quizzes with that. And then we also had the first day of series about Google Forms. So these would be the 3 places that I would look if, as you're trying something in Forms, you're like, how do I do this? Go to this slide and look through those. And so at this point, I do want to thank you guys for being part of this today. We do have the feedback form again. That will be bit.ly/3grglln. It is case sensitive. I'll put that link in the chat as well. And I'll also email it to you later today. So let me make sure we have that. As we've done each day, if you have questions, you can stick around and certainly ask those, and we'll take some time to make sure that we address any that come up. Carter, please don't take the mirror off the wall. Can you go back to Mama, please? Thank you. So please fill out that feedback form, be honest with it. Please be aware, be mindful of how those scales work with the 1s and 5s as you're filling it out. And again, if you have any questions, you can stick around, ask those, and we'll look at them together.
You showed us how to put in a link on the form under description, but now I don't see where that is.
Okay. Yep. So let me get back in and I'll model that again.
Okay.
Daddy,
Carter,
let me say hi.
you've already said hi.
Let me say one hi then. Okay? Okay? Okay?
Okay. Say hi.
Hi.
Good job.
Hi.
Okay. So I'm in my form. Are you looking at my screen right now?
Yes, I'm looking.
Okay. So in here, I would recommend we have our question. I want to go to the 3 dots. and description,
Oh,
and then I can put in what the web address would be. So if it's google.com, then if I am in the preview or the fill it out mode, and I see this, it's linked in there and it'll take me to my website.
all right. I think I got it now.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Let's see. What other questions do you all have?
Adam, I'm getting the weirdest things when I'm typing in googleforms.com. I got
Okay.
forms.com instead, but in my Google search bar, it says googleforms.com. It says not secure. It looks totally different from anything we've seen.
Okay, Barbara, can you share your screen with me? I'll stop my screen share, and then if you could share with me, then that might help me to figure out what's going on.
Okay, I will try. No, I can't. Hang on. Oh, wait, I see share screen.
Oh,
Okay.
good. Okay.
All right.
Cool. Well done. Okay.
What is this?
I don't know what that is, but you want it to be forms.google.com instead
Okay.
of google.forms.com.
All right.
Yep. All right. And so now we go to template gallery.
Right. And then I can choose general.
Mhm.
Okay. That must have been the problem before. Thanks a lot. I've got another meeting to go to. I appreciate all your help.
Oh, you're
I'll
welcome.
go do the feedback form.
Okay. Have a great day.
Thanks. You too.
Bye.
Hi, Adam. I just missed what you just did.
Oh, okay.
So, but I've got docs.google.com, but it says /form. So I typed in what you said to type in, but it's the template thing. I can't seem to find it. So where did you go?
Let's see.
I'm sorry, I just missed that.
No, it's okay. Let me.
Because I was messing with it, trying to find it.
I'm going to share my screen again. In here, I need to open my school district one. Okay, so I'm going to forms.google.com.
Mhm.
When I get in here,
That's what it looks like. Oh, well, it doesn't look like that. Hang on for a second.
Okay. And are you in your school district account or a personal account?
It's a school district account.
Okay. Would you prefer to share your screen or do you
Sure,
like looking at mine?
I can share.
Okay.
Hello. Can you see it?
Yep. So scroll to the top of that page. Click where it says forms in the top left.
Right here?
Yep. And then we'll just hang out for a second.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you click the 3-line menu, the hamburger menu?
Right here. So I looked online and it said something about installing Google Drive template gallery, something about going to a new button. I mean, do I have to download something?
No, you shouldn't have to.
All right.
No, and that's like a really old version of templates, so you wouldn't need to do that. Can you go to Drive? So click on Drive at the bottom. And then we're going to click on New. And then More. And then the arrow to the right of Forms. And From Template.
Oh, wow.
So let's see if we can get to them that way.
It's like going to Timbuktu.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Okay, so your district doesn't have any available, but if you click on general, then you should have the ones that we were looking at.
okay, great.
So
All
I don't
right.
know if you want to favorite that because it was so convoluted to get there, but that might help.
Okay, done. All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay,
Not gonna
any
get
final questions out there?
Now, how do I get out of here?
Okay, any last questions that the final few folks have?
How did your interview go?
I haven't heard from them. I felt that it went pretty well. So they said that they plan to have a pretty quick turnaround and that I should know by Friday. So we'll see.
Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for your help.
Oh, absolutely. Well, thank you all. I'm excited to see you guys again tomorrow as we look at hyperdocs and choice boards. This is a really fun session. I think that you'll find lots of ideas as we go through it. Thank you again for being here, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.